Hello everyone and welcome back to Crypto Bytes, where we discuss all things crypto, DeFi, airdrop, and more. My name is Brian, and wow, it's been 2 or 3 months since my last video, and if you've been even remotely engaged with crypto or any kind of market of any kind over the last few months, especially since the start of the year, you've known how crazy volatile it's been, up, down, very little sideways, just really extreme one way or the other. Unfortunately, during that time, like many of you probably, I've lost a decent amount of what I had made towards the latter part of last year. But, through those losses, I feel like I've learned a lot, and that's why I'm back here today, ready to share with you guys a lot more of what I've been doing recently, because I feel like there's nowhere to go but up at this point. So currently I've been farming probably 90 to 100 different airdrops of various kinds. And on this video today, I'm going to share with you a few of the airdrops that I'm farming, but also a strategy that I'm really focused on that is eliminating my ability to need the market to go up in order to make money. I feel like I've been more focused on what can I do with both an up, sideways, or down market, and how to limit volatility as much as possible while at the same time generating as much yield as possible too. And so yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump right in. So to start things off, I'm sure many of you are aware, but what I've been focused on a lot recently has been using the asset JLP, which is from Jupiter on Solana. And basically what this is as you can see here, it's a index fund of Sol, ETH, BTC, and then some stables. I believe it's about 40% stables, 20-30% Sol, and then 10 to 15% ETH and Bitcoin with the remainder there. And then in addition to that, yield is generated that helps that adds to the price of this based off of traders' profit and loss and any fees that are generated on the Jupiter Perp trading exchange. And so basically, since JLP is, if 50% kind of the majors, BTC, ETH, and Sol, and then 50% stables, when in an upward market, it's not going to yield as much as, if you just held Sol or BTC as an example itself necessarily. But in a sideways or downward market, it limits your losses, and you can actually the price of JLP actually might be going up depending on how many fees are being generated from the perp stacks during that time. And so just holding this asset alone, it's currently averaging about 42% APY a year. That's just if you hold the asset and do nothing else. That's what it's currently generating. But I like to get a little bit more than that, and so when possible. And so what we're going to talk about today is a number of different apps on Solana that have JLP integrated, where you can basically increase that APY with leverage. And so yeah, let's jump into the first of those. So the first one is Camino. So Camino is, I believe, the largest lending and borrowing platform, if not the largest, it's the second largest lending and borrowing platform on Solana. And they've been around for a number of years. I feel super safe using them because they've been through it all. And they have this product called Multiply, where basically what you can do is either with Sol or with JLP, you can basically leverage those products by borrowing USDC in the case of JLP, or if you are leveraging Sol, you can borrow Sol against a Sol derivative, and you can basically leverage those in the case of JLP up to 6 times the amount if you want. And so you can see here that by looping JLP, borrowing USDC and then buying JLP and then borrowing more USDC to borrow more JLP, you're able to get a max APY of over 99% here at the moment. And so this is one platform that I've been using to increase the leverage that I have on JLP. And they're currently in their season 3 of their airdrop. I don't know how much longer the Camino season 3 airdrop is going to run, because it has been running for a number of times, for a number of months, sorry. But I do think that if you are looking for an airdrop play that allows you to have less volatility in the market that we're at right now, so you can utilize JLP and leverage that and earn airdrop points with Camino, that is definitely one option for you. The next one that I've been using, which I believe I've shown on a video in the past before, is NX Finance. And so NX Finance is smaller than Camino, but they have a similar product where you can earn from lending USDC, USDT, or SOL, just straight lending, no borrowing. But then what I truly like to use is their leverage product here. So they have a number of different leverage products. The ones that I really work on is either the JLP one or JLP Hedge. And so JLP, this is just similar to what I just discussed with Camino, where you're basically depositing JLP, borrowing USDC, and then you're able to leverage that up to 7 times if you'd like, so that you can achieve a max APR of 136% with JLP. What I'm using mostly though these days is I'm using this JLP Hedge, and what that does is instead of borrowing USDC or USDT when you're depositing JLP, you're borrowing SOL. And so what that means is that, you know, if you are trying to be defensive, or if you even think that we're going into a downward market, you can borrow SOL against the JLP. And since SOL has about 35% of the makeup of what JLP is, the price of SOL goes down. Obviously JLP is most likely going to go down with it, but because you're borrowing SOL, then the amount of what you have deposited versus the amount that you're borrowing, is going down in dollar terms, because you're borrowing SOL, which in this example is going down more compared to JLP. And so what I'll get into in a moment how I'm using this hedge in particular, but I just wanted to explain how this works first. There's another 2 products that are very similar to NX Finance. By the way, NX Finance is in their 2nd season of airdrop, and so again, they've been running that for a few months too, so there may not be a lot of time, but I do think both with Camino or NX Finance or any of the next 2 that I'm going to go over, if you're depositing $500 to $1,000 in there, I think that you'll still, be able to get at least $100 or more from their airdrop when it does happen in the next few months. Great. So then the next one is Vaultka. And so just like NX Finance, they do have a lending option where you can earn by lending JLP, USDC, or SOL. You can also borrow, unlike NX Finance. So this is just lending and borrowing if you'd like. The rates are okay. I don't really use the lending portion. What I do use is their leverage. And so with them, just like NX Finance, you can deposit JLP, and then you can either borrow USDC, or they have this hedge option where you can borrow SOL against the JLP. And so just like I explained with NX Finance, you can either leverage your JLP borrowing USDC, in which case if the market's going up, then obviously you're getting JLP is going to be going up, and you're also getting a larger APY because with the leverage. If the market's going down and you're using the hedge option, then while JLP may be going down, the APY is making up for what you're going down, and the amount that you're borrowing in SOL is going down, such that you actually would probably be profiting in that endeavor at that time. Vaultka doesn't have a points program right now, and they haven't announced anything regarding an airdrop, but I mean, most platforms these days are doing airdrops at some point in time. So I've been not as heavily using this, but it's a good product. They just upgraded from V1 to V2, so clearly, they're investing in the platform and growing it, and it's looking a lot cleaner than it was in the V1. So it's I'm trying to get in early. If there's an airdrop in the future, awesome. If not, the product itself is generating yield for me, so I like it. Lastly, of these kind of NX Finance, Vaultka, these JLP leveraging platforms, there's another one called Loopscale. And so Loopscale, they basically have borrowing and lending just like with Vaultka, and then they have loops, which basically allows you to get leverage on JLP or Sol. So what I'm more focused on is either this JLP USDC, which means you're longing crypto in this example, or I'm using the JLP Sol, where I can short Sol by borrowing it against JLP. And then here, basically, the APY is actually higher than the other two, so I do like Loopscale in that regard. It's a little bit different. Let me show you. In that when you are making these deposits, you actually are choosing a time period of how long you want to run this loop for. And so typically what I'll do is I'll do it for about a week, just because the markets have been so crazy. I don't want to, by the way, and you're not locked in, you can actually close it out at any point in time that you want, but it's helpful if you try and stick to the time period that you choose, because the amount that you'll generate from the yields is actually higher if you let it go to term versus if you cut it early. But obviously, if you think that the market's going to go down, or if the market's going to go up in this case, and we're shorting Sol, you want to get out, you're not locked in, so you have the option. And so you can get a little bit more leverage here on Loopscale than the other two. I think it's 5x for the hedge, and then it's 7x for going long. And then the other thing with Loopscale is that, let me show you here. So in the reward section, in addition to, they do have the points program, so you're able to see how many points you're doing. There isn't a leaderboard, so I don't know how well I'm comparing against others, but again, I think if you're putting in 500, $1,000 in here, this one has been around the least amount of time compared to NX Finance, Camino, and Vaultka. So I think you'll be pretty decent as far as ranking up on this one. But so what you can also do if you don't have the 500 to 1,000, or if you just want to get even more points, you can do some easy things, just some of these social tasks here. Or what they also have is, I'd say probably like a couple times a week, a new one of these things will pop up where you basically can get points just by holding a specific asset. So, if you, and you don't have to hold it for longer than when you click this claim. So you go buy 5 JLP, click claim, you'll get the points. You can then go sell the JLP to get the next one if you want, or hold it, or do whatever you want with it. But it's just an easy way for you to get, a few thousand more points just by holding some assets for a very brief period of time. So I usually try and take advantage of this whenever I see new things popping up, just because it's an easy way to, get more points. So those are the main ways that you can both leverage JLP both on the long range and also shorting. But let me show you this really cool new app that's only been around a few months that I've been using, where I'm using the hedges on these other platforms, and how I'm longing on this other one. So the last one I wanted to go over with you guys is this platform called DefiTuna. The name is kind of quirky, but the platform is pretty awesome. So they have lending just like the others. They just have lending here, so you can a variety of different stable coins and JLP, ETH. You can even get BTC, Bonk, and a few others. So there is that lending. Their rates are okay, just like with the other ones. I'm not really focused on that. What I am focused on, though, are their pools. And so They have a variety of pools here that they're using Orca as the backbone. Orca is one of the largest DEX on Solana. So there's a lot, you can see here, a lot of liquidity on these pools. So, they have a Sol, BTC, JLP, ETH, even Jupe. So they have a number of different pools here with a lot of volume flowing through those. And what you can do is, if you come here into their trade section, is, let's say I want to, well, let me go with JLP since that's what we're talking about here. So if I want to get involved in this JLP pool, you can see that if I set a relatively tight range, which is defaulted here, that's offering a 24-hour yield of 11%. That's no leverage, just depositing this pool within this range, and you're getting 11% yield in 24 hours, not APY, that's per day, 11%. Now, where this gets really awesome is that you can then leverage up to 5x on your deposit. So in this case, if I kept this same type range, now I'm making 55% per day by putting in JLP into this pool. Now, in addition to that, what you can do is you can then decide, what your bias is. Are you thinking that the market is going to be going up, or is it going to be going down, or is it going to be kind of staying neutral? If you think it's going to be staying neutral, so in this case, it's defaulted to the borrow ratio of 50%. So that means if the market stays within this kind of midpoint where you're entering the range at, then that's where your capital is basically staying the same. If it goes too far up or too far down, even though if it's still in the range, your capital is going to be decreasing a bit because you're borrowing both JLP and USDC against your position, and because the price of JLP in that case would be going up, then the amount that you've borrowed, the cost of that in dollar terms is actually going up as well. So that's why in the case of being kind of neutral here, you want the price to be staying as close to your entry point as possible. But what I'm doing mostly is I'm going and pushing this over to borrowing 100% USDC. So I'm basically going long on the market here. So what I'm doing is I'm going between 4 to 5x leverage on JLP. I'm going long on USDC. And then at the same time when I'm doing this, I'm going over to NX Finance, Vaultka, Loopscale, and then I'm going and using their JLP hedge products. So that way I'm going short on the market at the same time. And what that allows me to do is basically be delta neutral in my approach, but still get this massive 55% APY in this case. Now in reality, what I'm doing is I'm using a much larger range just so I'm not having to rebalance all the time. So, I'm going like, the market's kind of been down today, so I'm skewing a little bit differently, but I just opened a position earlier before this video where I kind of set my bottom at $3.45 on JLP, and then I'm setting my upper bound at $4, and then I'm going long here. So basically, and if I'm entering at $3.60, since the range is much wider, I'm only getting 4.6% on my JLP per day. Still not too bad. That's over 1,000% APY a year on a relatively stable asset compared to Bitcoin, Sol, etc. And then by adding in the short via Loopscale, Vaultka, and NX Finance, I'm also farming those airdrops. I'm getting the yield from my JLP on those as well, and then I'm also shorting to kind of hedge my position here. And so, you can do a wide variety of things on DefiTuna. Like I said, you can, not only does it need to be JLP, you could do the same thing with Sol if you wanted even more volatility. Look at how massive their yield is for these tight ranges. It's, well, actually in this case, it looks like JLP today is almost on par with the same yield as Sol, which usually Sol has a lot higher, BTC also, today they have, it's a much less yield, but still you're getting 10-12% on your BTC per day on yield. I haven't found anywhere where you can do that other than maybe going levered long on perp sticks, but you're not earning yield there. You're just leveraging the position. So I'm really liking what DefiTuna is doing. The other thing, actually, let me show you that you need to be cognizant of when you're doing this is you need to see that since you're using leverage, this red amount, this is liquidation. So you can get liquidated by using DefiTuna just because you're borrowing and you're using leverage. So let's go back to my use case where what I did earlier today. So you can see here that because I have a pretty wide range, my range and where I can get liquidated at if I'm going total 5x is almost the same. So in that case, and it really just depends on what the borrow rates are at the time of when you're entering into the position. A lot of times the liquidation threshold might be like 1 or 2% less than your range if you're doing a full 5x leverage. But if you go and drop down to just 4.5 leverage, which is still a decent amount, you can see here now I'm 3% less than where my range ends on where I'd be liquidated. In addition to that, they do have limit orders. So if you want to kind of, especially like if you're leaving in a position open overnight, you can go and add limit orders on, in this case, let's say that I have my range at 345, the liquidations is at 335. Let's say I want to put a limit order to stop out at 340. I can go and put that here, set it, and then DefiTuna will take care of that for you. They do charge a small, I think it's like 0.5% on if order is closed from these limit orders. So it's a little bit taxed there, so I try not to use these as much if I can avoid it. So usually I'll try and manually close if need be before the limit order comes in, but it is nice to have that backup just in case, so that way you don't get liquidated. And by the way, when you do get liquidated, which has happened to me a couple times in the last month when I've been a little bit more aggressive on other things, is it's not a full liquidation, it's a partial liquidation. So they do charge probably about 1% on that, so you are getting a little bit more taxed, but at least you're not losing your entire stack on that you added in here when you do get liquidated. So there's a lot of cool things that DefiTuna offers. I think I've covered most of it. I do know that they're coming out with even more cool things, like they're going to be adding a yield calculator in this area, so you can go and say, if I want to set JLP at 4.5, with all these settings, how much, I want to do this over 5 days, what kind of yield will that look like for me? So they do all kinds of calculations, and there's going to be a nice little calculator tool for that, and I know that they're constantly building. So this is another one where they haven't announced any kind of airdrop or token yet, but I'm generating more yield here than I make from most airdrops anyway, so I highly recommend using them. And if and when they do decide to do an airdrop, even better. But yeah, I've been using these guys for a few months now, and they've only been around for a few months, but I see very promising things from DefiTuna moving forward. So hope this video has been helpful. JLP's been a lifesaver over the last few weeks as the market's just been, unfortunately, been going down a lot, and or just been really choppy and crazy, and so it gives you a good amount of yield while at the same time letting you have less volatility in your overall portfolio. So thanks again, everyone, and until next time, happy farming.